Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Library Management System, and welcome to Stockflow Tech. My name is Emmanuel Meli, and we're going to discuss properties of a page, and then we will see how we can use it in terms of various pages that we have here, such as for the authors, for the patrons, for the book lending. This is a process where somebody books a book, and then the request get approved, and then they are issued with the books. Remember, in this step there are some actions we don't need them at the moment. If it's approved, then we don't need to see submit, and we don't need to see approve. So we want to see how we can hide them, or how we can make them maybe um, either editable to be false, so that no one can click submit again. When it's already when it's already approved, you can see it has changed the status. There are various ways we can control this code from running if it has maybe changed to another state. But in this case, I want us to explore on parts of using the page properties to ensure that we can have controls over this page. So pages in AL, they have various properties or features, and some of them have been highlighted here. Even like a source table, it's like a feature on its own, which specifies the table where those fields will come from. Then I'm going to discuss triggers and action and a procedure in a table. I will start with the variables. First of all, I'll highlight what we want to achieve, and then I'll try to explain how to achieve our goal. Looking at our page right here, I want us to be able to hide these actions when we don't need them. For instance, at the time of creation of a new request, let's call it a new request. Don't mind my typos. So at this time when we are creating new requests, I'm going to I don't need approve here when I'm just requesting for books. I need to see I need to just see the lines and maybe put some few information right here, understanding that this part auto picks some of the data. When I select like this patron S2, it auto picks the data from the table of the patron to this table, the table that holds this data here. Anyway, don't worry about those. We had discussed earlier about the table relations. And right this part, I will just remind us that we are not able to see any book because all the books have been booked. We discussed that on our previous video. And therefore, let's have a few books here. I'm going to have a book ID, maybe AL page properties. AL page properties. Then we can just guess a number for our I as in B, and then genre, maybe it's for maybe programming. Okay, nice. We can have others. If you don't like these authors, or if they are not the real authors of this book, you can just click new to create a new author. Let's say author 4. Let's have myself as the author. You can still have yourself as the author, and then my email, then you can have a random phone number, then click OK. You can see it has picked my details. Don't worry, we discussed this one on those videos that we did below on on list parts. Then remember, this is also a property of a page, the list part. This is a different type of a list. This is also a type of a page, which is a document. And then under the document, we have we have this part here. We have this part. It's a property again for the page. But that is not what we wanted to discuss today. We wanted to see how we can enable and disable these actions appropriately when you need them. And I used this example of a new, I created a new request here, which has a typo, which no longer has a typo. Then remember we had no book, so we had to go ahead and create a book. We created a L page properties book. Then that is our book right there. You can see it's available. Okay, now when I submit this, I expect it to change status, which we've also explained that. But again, I don't need to see approve an issue because I'm the one applying to get these books from the library. I don't need to approve anything. If need be, the approver might be maybe the librarian or those staff in the library. And even the person issuing this book is also a different person. So in the future, we'll discuss how to be specific in terms of exposing certain actions to certain people and maintaining the same page. But in this case, I want us to hide approve and issue at this point. I just want us to have the submit so that when I apply for these books, I submit the request. So let's go to our submit action. It's here. There is an action property known as enabled. You can have it true, or you can have it as your custom variable, where you can dictate the state of that variable, which we are going to do. You can have it false. So when you have it false, it disables. We can just test that on before we move on. So we are going to test our action if it's still enabled, because if we've disabled, you can see it's disabled. You cannot click, it cannot do anything. So now I want us to use our own variable. I'm going to create a new variable here as a boolean. Let's call it is open. This is to store the state of that document when it is open. And then it's a boolean. So it's a variable type boolean. And then how do we initialize this variable? I want us to initialize that variable, the new variable that we created, the is open variable. I want us to initialize when we open this page. So I'm going to introduce us to a new property of a page called trigger, page triggers. So let's have a snippet for trigger, and then there's a trigger on open page. So this trigger will run a code that you specify right here at the time when you're opening a page. And again, we can just make it simpler this way. It's open true. So this means every time we open this page, let me open it. Every time we open this page, then this variable will be initialized as true. But that is not exactly what we want. We want something dynamic. We want to see the status of that record. So we will use an if statement here. If status, if I'm forgetting something, if rec, because we are on a page, then we need to use rec to refer to that particular table. If rec.status is equal to rec.status is equals to open, then is open is equals to true. Let's delete that one so that we can put an else statement here. Else is open is equals to false. Now, we've created a variable as a global variable. We've initialized a variable, but we've conditionally initialized this variable with our condition that if that record is open, then is open will be true. If it else, like if it's approved or submitted or posted, then that state will be initialized as false. They're open now. Now we will now use our variable at this point of submit. Instead of using a true or false, let's use is open, because this property, it takes a boolean, it consumes a boolean variable. So now what is our expectation when we run this record, which when we open this record, which is open? We're expecting the action to be enabled if it's open, because it will be true. Now let's test that. So we want to see what really happens when we open. Okay, the state of this record is it's open, so let's open it. Okay, it's open. So we said that when it's open, we initialize we've initialized this variable to true. So and then we've also stated in our action that if it's true, if we'll enable this button, this action for submit, if is open status. We'll just take its open status. So I'm going to open another record, this one. I'm sure that is not open anymore. So if I try to open this, it's approved. You can see when it's approved, then you cannot submit because it's already approved. Now so let's make it now to these other fields. Okay. We want also to do the same thing for approve, and then the same thing for issue. So for issue, we want to only enable issue wherever whenever the document, the request document has been approved. And then for the approve, we want to enable it if it has been submitted. That is, we'll just use our variable, the is open variable right here. Let's say enabled to be not is open. So instead of saying false of this variable, you can just use not. It negates the state. So for instance, here we are taking true, but here we will take false. We can only take false if we specify that not is open. It's not true, so it's false. Anything that is true, then it means it's not false. So we are just applying the same expression right here. But for submit, this may not be so good to use this one, but because remember, is open is false all the time when it is not open. So I want us to activate this thing in a very explicit way. They are proof right here. So I'm going to submit this request, submit, and then remember it's pending now, but this one has not changed. Why? Because there's another property that we need to put in this action to update the state. Let's do that. Under our action right here, we want to see there's a current page dot update. So this one will update everything in that page at that time. So let's test this one. We test our property, the current page dot update. Unfortunately, we cannot be able to submit a document that has already been submitted. So remember, we will also need to have an action to, to be able to reopen this document. That again is another thing that maybe will also hard you. Let's copy that and then reopen. Yeah, you're going to learn something right here. So you can see it has an error because it's not one word. Whenever something is not one word, you can use double insertion commas and then reopen whichever way you want to type. You can type with a space or with an hyphen, and then you might want to change the image. Yeah, right here. Reopen, reopen, and then what it will do, it will bring back the open status, and it will also modify the record so that it change the status to something else to open, and then you can have update on this hand so that it updates any action, anything right there. So for reopen, we want to be able to reopen this document only when it is pending. So we will use our variable, but let's just create a new variable. There are two ways of creating a variable of like boolean of the same type. Is pending is another way, and then you use it as boolean. Alternatively, you can avoid using that, and then just after the first variable, if it's the same data type such as boolean, it applies to a few of them, then you can have is pending. It's still a boolean variable which can have a value true or false, nothing else, 1 or 0. So right here, let's make this code little more interesting. So we will check right here after else. I want us to have a code like more than one line. So whenever something is more than one line, it's good to have a body so that it will execute any code that you'll put inside there. So right here, if status of that record is open, then is open will be true, else you begin something else. Else now is open is false. And again, we will also check if rec status is equal to rec status. Remember, this is a field of type option. If it's equals to pending, then we can have is pending to be true, else we can have is pending to be false. So this is like a recursion. It's like a loop. So it will, when you open this page, every time you open it, it will come here. It will check if status of that record is open. Then it does this. But if it's not open, then it will go here. It will go to this line, and then it will again check if, now that you said it's not open, it will be like, okay, so what is it? Is it pending? If it's pending, that its pending will be initialized to true, else its pending will be initialized to false. Anyway, sorry for the lengthy explanation, but again, we have to proceed. So I want this action to be only visible. Instead of using enabled, we can also use a property known as visible. This applies to action, it applies to a field, it applies to a part, it applies to a number of objects and properties of objects. So visible, reopen will only be visible if is pending is true. That is it. So if we test this one, Let's test. We want to test two things. We want to test this feature and this feature right here using the record that is pending, because it will only be visible if it's pending. We will test and see that one. So we want to test the visible property in action and also the current page dot update. I'll use this. Okay. Let's add a book right here. Yes, we've added a book. You can see reopen is available right here. Then let's test it. We are expecting it to do some, maybe, is it magic or there's something here. Yeah. Let's open a document that is not, yeah, this document is open. You can see there's something missing here, and what is missing is our property, the reopen property. It is missing because when we are opening this page, the trigger on open page runs. And when it runs, it initializes the variable, this one, because if that record is pending, it makes it true. When it makes it true, then it 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 uh it it hides this reopen because we've used visible. Now, there's this part of the code that I want it to update. I want us, when we reopen, it turns this one active. So let's see if it will do that one. So it only works on documents that are pending. So let's try to reopen. We want to see this changing to open, and maybe, yeah, open. Yeah, it has changed to open. And again, it has not updated the submit. It's supposed to close to disappear, and it is supposed to make this one reappear. Just right here without going back and then coming back again. It's supposed to do something like that. So we just go back to our code and introduce another trigger that is known as trigger on modify record. So it returns a boolean. So it's bringing an error because it has to have a return value, which is a boolean. So it runs before a record is modified in a table. So we want it to run this same code right here. Just copy and paste right here, which is why we will make a procedure for this code so that we'll just reuse that procedure in these triggers. So, but for now, let's test this one and see. In the meantime, we'll try to create a procedure. Let's call it set page controls. So it will always set controls of this page, and it will have this code, that code right there. So it has finished publishing, and now we want to see if anything has happened whatsoever. So submit. I want us to submit. And then when we submit, it will change to pending, and then I want this action to be able to expose to me an action known as reopen. Let's submit. Beautiful. That is very nice. So it's not even close to magic. So we submitted, this appeared, and then this one turned to editable false. So now you can still make this one disappear if you don't want to see submit anymore. What you do, you just come to our action right here, and then instead of using enable, use visible, so that it can only be visible wherever it's open. So let's have a variable to check for us they approve. But again, maybe I don't want to use a variable. Maybe I want to use to check the field directly. I'll just check the field. Our field is status, so it's rec dot status is equals to rec dot status when it is equal to pending. So I want this to be enabled, not enabled, but visible, so that we minimize the number of actions right there on that part. Only when it is pending. And then finally, this action, it will be visible only when it's approved. Do we have a variable for it's approved? No, we don't have. So let's go back to our variables. It's approved. Then right here, I want us to run this code. We'll just avoid using the, let's have begin. And then inside here, let's have our code. It's in our, yeah, right there. But again, we will be checking if status is approved. Okay, there's an error. So it's disturbing our IntelliSense. So IntelliSense works best when it's not in the page or in the object. So if it's approved, then Control DD is approved. So what we are doing here, it's a procedure. It has not been consumed. It has not been ran anywhere. It still has 0 references. So I want us to avoid using a lot of code inside this part and use the procedure. Our procedure is called set page controls, and then right here again we'll delete all this code and then set page control. The code we deleted is a subset of this because this one has already been improved. So this code will always be run when we open the page and when we init. There's also another trigger known as on init. Then we can decide to run the set controls on init. So we have a lot of things to test right here. We want to test if this procedure really runs. And you can see it has 3 references. It has 1 here, 2, 3. And so for this case, our issue, it will only be issued if is approved is equals to true. And then remember, approve is using a different way of variable. This in itself is a variable. Okay, it's a field, but it has a value inside it. And it has it gives us a variable because we've said that we are checking this field against a given status if it's pending. So if it's pending, then it returns either true or false. If it's pending, then it returns a true. If it's not pending, then it returns a false. Now, we want to see if those actions appear and reappear based on the on the state of that document. So our expectation is that these variables will help us control that page, help us control that page and even the actions in that page. So remember, there's something we did in our previous video that we were using these variables, but we decided that no, that was it. So we decided to use a code unit. But for this case, we don't have to use a code unit for this because we just want to run it on this page. So we want to test these triggers and variables and even this procedure and even these actions and how they appear and reappear. Nice. So I will open a document. Let's use this. Okay. This is an approved document. In an approved document, you can only issue. So let's issue these books. issue. So it is issued, but again, under the issue, we have not specified that it should update the page. We need to specify that current page dot update. Then for approve, we can also use something different for current page. See, current page takes a lot of procedures. So I want us to close this page. This is also another feature that is good to use. When you approve a document, just close it. You don't want to see it again. You can also still close this one when you, instead of updating, you can still close, or do both. You can still current page dot update and close, or close and update, but it's better to update and then close. So there's also another property known as in this version, in version 20, we can still use promoted categories. So under promoted categories, those actions at the top of that page, which I'm just showing right here. These actions, there are many actions right here, but some have been hidden. You can have them as promoted. That is to say, you don't have to see the actual um, action, especially when you have a lot of actions. Maybe you want to group them in terms of these are for processing, these are for reports, these are for maybe lending. Maybe if lending has some actions, you can just group them into group. So we call them promoted categories. But first, there's something we need to test. Let's issue this and see if it will close and update. Issue, it has closed. Let's reopen and see. So this document is issued, so there's no action. But we need an action to be able to receive these books back, to receive them back. And we've also not write a code that should tell us that these books, they should be moved from being booked to being issued. And also, there's a new request here. It's still pending, so we can still reopen. You can see when you reopen it has this reopen still visible. For an open document, we don't need to see a reopen. So let's go back to our action. Reopen. Where are you? You are here. So we want it to be visible when it's pending only. So, and why is it visible when this document is open? Why? Let's reopen again and see. Yeah, it has disappeared. It's because we didn't update. We have updated, didn't we? Okay. Anyway, we'll check on those the future. But for now, let's do the promoted categories and then we wrap it up before 40 minutes. So now, let's go back to our code. And then let's have a promoted category for new. Let's have one for process. Let's have one for report. And let's have one for, maybe let's call it library. Let's call it issue so that it becomes category 4. By default, Microsoft offers you to use category 4 to around somewhere 11. So we'll just see the number. So it has this new process and report that is for reserved for AL, but we can still add our own here for category 4, and then for 5 maybe we want to receive back the book. So now let's go back to our actions. Instead of having promoted category as process under submit, let's have it as Okay, it's okay to have it as process, and then have this as process still. Even this, let's have it as process. Then for issue, let's have it as category 4. You can see it goes up to category 20. So let's use category 4. And you should be asking yourself, why are we using category 4? And I just did counted right here on top. I counted this. I said this is 1, this is 2, the report is 3, and this is 4, and this is 5. We can still add the sixth one to be maybe approval. Let's call it approval so that we can have any action for approvals right there. We can have another one for maybe submit. Okay, let's stick to that one so that I don't complicate it. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 5 for receive and we have 6 for approvals. So right here under approve, let's have category 6. Yeah, right there. Nice. So let's see what happens when we do that. So there are other properties, such as maybe you don't want to insert a record here. You can just say insert allowed to be false. Then maybe you don't want to modify a record here. You can just have it as modified to be false or true. You can have it as true. Again, if you want it to be true, like you be able to insert. Maybe you don't want to delete a record, so we put it as delete allowed to be false. So we'll not be able to delete a record at this page. These are amongst many more page properties. Again, under page, we have these groups. Maybe you don't want to edit this data. So there's a property for editable. We can make it false or true, or our custom variable is not is open, so that we don't edit the header and even the lines. The lines are in this part here. We have part. This is also a property. Another part, we have properties such as editable again. So we will not be able to edit this document if it's not open. And again, you can still add another variable, maybe editable not open, or we want to edit this document when is open. Is open and remember, and both of these variables have to be true so that you can be able to edit. But if you use or, you will be able to edit if it's open or is pending, so that we don't edit documents that are been issued, those that have been booked, those that have been approved. So up to this point, I want to wrap it up so that we don't take a lot of time trying to explain the properties. Action is also, as they can carry a lot of properties. So we are going to wrap it here, and thank you for watching up to this far. Please give a subscribe, give a like to this video kama imekubamba, that is, if it has been useful to you. You can also comment to ask for something or to suggest for more advancement. Your suggestion will be very useful to us. And this is open document. Let's submit. It has been submitted. Now you can see there this process and approvals. These are the promoted categories that I was talking about now. This was in number 2. And then inside we have reopen, inside we have approve. You can still have a lot of actions under approve, so long as you specify those actions to belong to the same promoted category. Anyway, that was it from Stackflow Tech. Sit there and do much of the programming, learn more coding, and with AL, we promise to do the all library management system in Stackflow Tech. Thank you and have a fruitful learning.